Good evening, everybody. I know that we are all very happy about what occurred last night. I personally hate that I didn't get to see the most of the game myself. We had it on for a little bit at work. I caught glances of it here and there. I listened to some of it on the radio on the way home. I got back with about 6 minutes left in the third period. Happy with that result. The team needed a game like that. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in excess during the show and everything like that. But I'm really, really happy things went down the way that they did last night. This team really needed that. That's a big morale booster, especially going into another back-to-back. And you've got the Olympics not too far off. So there's some light at the end of the tunnel for, the guys getting a break, most of them anyway, except for Aho and Slavin. Excuse me. And, Freddie and Nick Ehlers and anybody that's in the Olympics and everything like that. There's a break coming up for everyone else. So, and I think that this team really, really can use it. But that's a good way to, take that step towards getting to the Olympic break and hitting the reset button for everybody. And, maybe one of Carolina's guys comes home with a gold medal. You never know. But all that aside, got to put that game in the rearview mirror now. Good confidence booster, but you can't be sitting there, reminiscing about how great the past is. Got to take care of the task at hand tonight. So we're going to get right into the show here. Do not underestimate New Jersey tonight. Just straight up don't. I'm not saying that Carolina's going to win. Or I'm sorry, I'm not saying that New Jersey is going to win. But I'm not expecting as poor of a performance as New Jersey had last time. I don't think Luke Hughes is going to score 2 goals for the Hurricanes. If he did, that would be great. And I would continue all the memes that I've been making, specifically ones involving flags of communist countries in Asia. But all that aside, just need to keep the momentum rolling right here because you get through these next couple of weeks, you go into the Olympic break. Coming out of the Olympic break, the Hurricanes need to make some more hay because come March, the schedule gets really, really tough. The more points you can get right now, the easier you're going to make your life later down the road. So let's go ahead and get into the next one here. All right. Canes and Devils. This will be their third game of the season. It's Carolina's chance to go ahead and win that season series and be done with it. If they secure a point tonight, that's all they got to do, and that is that. Hurricanes are now 29-15-4 to the Devils, who are 24-21-2. Carolina is 12-7-3 on the road. New Jersey is 12-8-2 at home. So Carolina's got just about as good of a record away as New Jersey does at home. And part of that is because New Jersey doesn't have great depth, so their matchups are a little bit lopsided. If they don't have their top 6 guys out there, their bottom 6 typically can't hang with a bottom 6 as good as Carolina's. And their defense is kind of in turmoil right now. New Jersey is, and Carolina's back to where they appear to be fully healthy. I have not seen anything about Gostisbehere playing tonight. As far as I know, he is not. Last 10 games, Carolina is 5-4-1, and the New Jersey Devils are 4-5-1. As I said before, this will be their third meeting where the Hurricanes have won the first 2. They won at home on the home opener 6-3. That was on the 9th of October. The 4th of January, Carolina won 3-1. Special shout out again to Luke Hughes. Thank you very much for your assistance. The game tonight, 17 January, and then they will wrap up the season series on the 28th of March. If they win this game tonight, season series isn't a factor with these guys anymore. You just got to stay ahead of them in the points, which that shouldn't be a problem. But anything that you can do to give yourself a buffer, including checking off tie-breaking criteria, January is a great time to do it. So, big picture here. Hurricanes have a plus 24 goal differential. New Jersey has negative 19. So, the Hurricanes kind of pumped their numbers up the other night with last night with that 9-1 win, 167-143. Definitely inflated that number a little bit from where it was before, but I'll take it. New Jersey 126-145. That being said, they can probably still win a high-scoring game with the roster they have if Carolina's occasional issues with not being able to score were to plague them tonight. Goals for per game, 3.40 to 2.62. Now, I know I just said that New Jersey could win a high-scoring game because they do have the type of players that can provide offense in bunches and can come alive. Excuse me. So the reason why I say that is New Jersey is one of those teams that can score in bunches, but when they don't score, they really don't. So if you keep them off the board in general, you'll be fine, but look out for those times where New Jersey can score in waves. We've seen them do it to Carolina in the past. Even though they're not playing the best right now, they still have players that are absolutely capable of doing things like that. Goals against per game, they're sitting at 3.09. And that's good news for Carolina because their goals for per game is sitting right at 3.40. So, again, one of those games where if Carolina scores 3, whether Luke Hughes helps them do it or not, good shot for them there. Goals against per game, 2.94. I'm happy to see this back below 3 for Carolina. By the time the playoffs come around, I would like for it to be closer to 2.5, maybe a little bit less. That's about bellwether for the Hurricanes. But again, it's starting to go in the right direction. Slavin being back is really going to help. The power play. We're going to talk a little bit more about the power play on the next slide. I'm really happy with it right now, 21.6. So it's finally eclipsed the 20% mark, and it's hopefully going to hold there. However, if you take October out of the equation, it's actually a little bit higher. We're going to talk about that, though. So the power play might not be as bad as we thought, at least on paper. Now that it looks like they've got it figured out, if they can maintain that trend, they'll be good there. New Jersey still has a 20.7 on the power play, despite their struggles. They do have the type of players that are made for those man advantage situations. Penalty kill, 79.2 to 76.6. Slavin's back. I'm expecting over the course of the season, should Slavin stay in the lineup, that'll start going up to around the 85% mark. That's where I would like to see that at. Now, the other thing that I would like to mention in regards to that, there were a lot of people worried saying if we can't kill penalties and can't play defense without Jacob Slavin, how far does this team actually go without him? To that I say, this is a normal effect. If Seth Jarvis or Sebastian Aho or somebody like that comes out of the lineup, theoretically, the offensive numbers of the team would go down. I think it's more important to have your number one penalty killer in the lineup to be the catalyst for the penalty kill. I think Jacob Slavin coming out of the lineup affects the penalty kill more than Sebastian Aho coming out of the lineup would affect the power play, theoretically, just to give an example of everything like that, because this team is built on defense, and Slavin is the catalyst and the cornerstone of all that. So him being out of the lineup does really hurt. But the fact that they've managed to keep it close to 80 for most of the time that he's been out is still impressive. Imagine the Capitals trying to score power play goals without Alex Ovechkin. It just wouldn't happen. It's kind of the same thing, just at the other end of the ice. Face-off percentage, 50.5 to 50.3. They're finally back up above 50. Needs to stay there, start creeping up a little bit. Ideally, you want 52. I think that they can get there. Not tonight, obviously. In a few games, they could be by the Olympic break. I would like for that to be back up to 52. The Hurricanes are a very, very possession-driven team, and face-off metrics or face-off percentages were the original possession metrics. So that's one thing that they need to get a little bit better at, but marked improvement compared to lately. All right, so here's what I want to talk about with the power play. Give me 1 second, please, guys. I want to view something here. Where's it at? Nope. Okay. All right. So since November 1st, Hurricanes power play percentage is actually 24.8. That's exactly about where it needs to be. Higher would be better, but if you're looking for like threshold of it being a really good positive impact on the team, this is about where you want it to be. So in the first 10 games in October, the power play percentage was 9.7. That is unacceptable. November, it climbed a little bit, but it still wasn't very good. In 15 games played, it was a 16.7 power play percentage. You'll also notice November, the penalty kill took a dip. Slavin being out really does that, even though he only played the first 2 games of the season up till that point. December, you'll notice this is where the upward trend really, really started. 14 games played, 24.4% power play, which is about where the overall number is from November 1st until now. And here in January, 36.7 in 9 games played. That is great. It is not sustainable, though. It will not stay that way, and that's totally fine. But 25 is what you want to look for. And the reason that I say 25 is, one, the Hurricanes are not a team that has to overly rely on the power play. They don't have to be power play merchants to win, but it definitely helps. Hold up 1 second here, guys. I'm afraid I'm having some technical difficulties here. So let's see here. All right, so back to this here. So 36.7, not sustainable. But like I was saying, the reason I look for 25 is ideally you want an 85% penalty kill, and then you have a 25% power play. That gives you about the net positive that you need for the Hurricanes to win on any given night, in any given game, when you just isolate looking strictly at special teams. So that's the biggest reason that I look for those two numbers with that. Now, going over here looking up the lines, these are the lines from last night. Only difference is Bussey will be in instead of, or excuse me, Frederick Anderson will be in instead of Brandon Bussey, as stated over here by Mike Morale. Brendan Moore says Anderson in net. Jacob Slavin is in. No other lineup changes other than Frederick Anderson being in net. The Devils this morning at their line rushes, Timo Meier, Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer, Jesper Bratt, Jack Hughes, Evgeny Dadonov. That top six is pretty good still on paper. That being said, Carolina as a team, especially with Slavin back in the lineup, totally capable of shutting them down. Absolutely capable of it. So that's the whole thing with that. Artsemi Gritsyuk has actually really, really impressed me. He is very, very good player. I like him a lot. Me and my buddy JJ, who unfortunately couldn't join us tonight, we've talked about him a lot. He's a very good player, and I think he has a very, very, very bright future. Glass and Brown for the third line there. Cotter, Glendening, and White. Palat is not skating. White is skating in his place. So this top pair right here, in theory, should be good. Hughes and Pesce. You got to press the left side of the ice, though, the side of the ice that Luke Hughes is on, because that's the best one where you can, more than likely force a turnover. Pesce, you might be able to beat him with foot speed, but you got to get past him first still. He's not as good as he was, but he's still one of the best shutdown guys in the game. He's at least in the top 20 at a minimum, but I would rank him closer to the top 15. Siegenthaler and Kovacevic, Dillon and Hamilton. Markstrom is in net. So top to bottom, it looks like Carolina minus the top six, which is the usual case, doesn't really have a big advantage here. I would be more concerned with Meier, Hischier, and Mercer. That line has a little bit more cohesion and chemistry than normal. Bratt, Hughes, Dadonov. You guys know that I've already got I put my opinion out there about Jack Hughes in the a lot of times. There's some people who try to say he's a top three player in the world, and he's the third best player on his own team. There's more to it than doing fancy stick handling and skating quick through the offensive zone and having good off puck routes. In that category, he's better defensively than he was, but he's still a very one-dimensional player. He's not hard to shut down. Or he's hard to shut down, but he can't defend very well. And I just don't think that it's in his DNA, and that's totally fine. But a lot of points does not make a player great. A complete game is what makes a player great, and he does not have that. Nico Hischier, on the other hand, does have that. So that's the other things to consider with that. If there's a one-for-one replication of Sebastian Aho in this league, it's Nico Hischier. He's the closest thing you have to him, that and maybe Rope Hintz. That's what I've always believed. You could maybe throw Robert Thomas in there. Young Anze Kopitar. There's a bunch of different examples there that you could have. But that top line right there is the one that I would be the most concerned with shutting down and getting the stall matchup with. And since Ehlers is playing with them for the time being, I don't know if it'll stay that way. Since Ehlers is playing with them for the time being, that adds you a little bit of an extra speed element to those guys. And that's one way that you could really, really make that matchup really favorable. So it kind of helps. It really does. I know that I was clowning a little bit about the Ehlers, Stahl, Martinook line, but in my defense, if I hadn't said anything about it last night, that line wouldn't have done anything. Things like this only happen when I get pissed off about them, and then they end up blowing up in my face. So you're welcome. All right, so finally nice to see the Hurricanes having a definitive speed advantage. This is a nice thing to see because this team is a team that plays with a lot of speed. Part of the reason why I didn't really want to bring Pesce and Shea back is because you have to keep a team that plays this way relatively young to be effective and relatively fast to be effective. Advantages in everything, 22 plus mile per hour, 20 to 22, and 18 to 20. Carolina has a pretty decent advantage in all those. Excuse me. Not so much the 18 to 20. So looking at the shot attempt differential here, there's a big difference in zone time right here, 45.5 to 40.8. New Jersey is one of those teams that is not scoring that much without that much offensive zone time. So that bodes well for the Canes. Shot attempt differential, Carolina is 8.2 above the league average, and New Jersey is actually above the league average at plus 1.5, which is more than what we normally see for the opposition as far as teams being above average that Carolina, plays against and everything like that. So New Jersey doesn't generate a ton of offensive zone time, doesn't shoot a lot. Deny. Step up at the blue line, stop their ability to enter, and you pretty much take away the best chance they have to beat Carolina. Be aggressive on those zone entry denials. Take away the neutral zone. Step up on everybody really, really, really quick. Don't let them have anything. Do the suffocating forecheck, suffocate them in the neutral zone, suffocate them again at the blue line, and there is nothing for them. That is literally all that they got to do. I say it like it's that easy, but it's not. But when you're playing against a team that's not scoring much and not retaining the offensive zone much at the same time, you can afford to be a lot more aggressive with those gaps, a lot more aggressive at your defensive blue line to keep them out of your zone. Freddie Anderson, for whatever fault he's had lately, he's still good at playing the puck. He's better at it than Bussy is. When Bussy plays the puck, I get legitimately nervous. Like, it's almost like Kochetkov amounts of nerve-wracking when he comes out to play the puck. When he comes out to play the puck, I'm like, they're going to score. But then when you go and you look at shots on goal differential, not too much of a difference there. Carolina has significantly higher shot attempts. Shot on goal differential, Carolina is barely above league average. New Jersey is right at it, but they're not scoring much right now. Carolina needs to keep it that way. Neutral zone time's about even. Defensive zone time, Carolina's not going to let New Jersey hang around in their defensive zone for very long, and that's totally fine. But this is one of those times where if you really just want to ensure, especially since you're on a back-to-back, if you just want to ensure, you just go ahead and deny them entry early on, get them frustrated, get to the other end, get an early lead, and then continue to play that way, maybe go into more of a shutdown mode after that if you get a good enough lead and everything. But attack when you can. Press when you can. Take what you're given when you can. But on a back-to-back, you want to get an early lead, you want to play your game, and you want to get to a point where you have a good lead going into the third period, and you don't have to kill yourself trying to get to the other end and score. That would be the best thing that they could do for themselves tonight, especially after coming off such a good game last night. Now, shots on goal, big difference here in every single zone, as expected. But you'll see the one place where New Jersey has a little bit more of an advantage as far as shot volume is in that high slot area, and they seem to do a lot more of that stuff below the goal line, which makes sense. That's their identity, having guys like Hughes, Meyer, Bratt, everybody like that that's good at working in tight around the net, because they're all good skaters, they're all good puck handlers, they can all shoot, they've all got a really good offensive mindset. And Jesper Bratt is the closest thing that there is to Seth Jarvis in this league, if you ask me. So another one of those games where if you can keep New Jersey on the perimeter, great. It's hard to do, though. It is really hard to keep them on the perimeter. Once they've gotten below the top of the circles, it is incredibly difficult to really take that ice away from them. So again, that's why I'm emphasizing tonight. The name of the game, deny, deny, deny. Do not let them pass your blue line any more than you absolutely just cannot stop them. Keep them out of your zone. They get frustrated. This becomes a significantly easier game to win if you do that. So you know how you see guys like Slavin, and Miller has really taken a step in this regard too, making those aggressive step-ups at the blue line to deny entry. This is a night where you kick that up a notch and you make your life a whole lot easier. Goals. Carolina has an advantage in every single situation here, but you'll also notice where New Jersey is getting all their goals from. Again, like I was talking about before, where they tend to generate the best of their chances and everything like that. That area right around the net, they love taking those wide angle shots. They love taking those shots right there in the slot, getting right on the doorstep and banging the puck in. But they do it very surgically. They do it very deliberately. They're not just, throwing pucks at the net and getting second chances all the time. These guys actually do generate their chances. You've heard of teams that are only good in 1/3 of the ice. Well, New Jersey is more like a team that's only good in 1/4 of the ice in that regard. So, again, keep them out of the offensive zone. This is a very winnable game. I don't want to say easy game, because there's no easy game. And you're on a back-to-back. But best thing you can do, step up the blue line, step up the blue line, step up the blue line. That's all you got to do. So going into the goaltending matchup here, this actually could be a pretty close goaltending matchup. Frederik Andersen and Jacob Markstrom actually have some pretty similar numbers. Right now, Freddie's on a good upward trend, though, so we'll take that. 19 games played. Frederik Andersen has 6 wins, 10 losses, and 3 overtime losses. Tonight, it would be really, really great to see him get to 7 wins, and then he's like at least, kind of at 500 at that point. 3.37 goals against average and an 8.63 save percentage. Jacob Markstrom has played 24 games. He has 12 wins, 10 losses, 1 overtime loss, a goals against average of 3.34, and a save percentage of 8.79. So their numbers are not too dissimilar. So if this turns into a goaltending matchup, it could be a thing of one timely save over the other. But again, I'm going to say this a lot this show. Deny entry, and this does not become a factor. That is the biggest thing the Hurricanes have to do tonight. Save percentages. Couldn't be much more opposite, these guys, where they're making their saves at and where they're not. Markstrom has the advantage on everything here, but he's also played a few more games, and Freddie's gotten a little bit better in regard to returning to form and everything like that. It's still close enough of a matchup, in my opinion, where if it became a goaltender's duel, Freddie makes 1 or 2 timely saves, Canes win. Markstrom makes 1 or 2 timely saves, the Devils win. So if it does come down to that, I'm expecting that to be a very narrow goaltenders battle, and that's not to say it would be strictly in a high-scoring game or strictly in a low-scoring game. It could go either way with these two in net. Again, I will say this one more time, and I'm sure it's not the last time I'm going to say it. Deny entry. Do not let that become a factor, and you don't have to worry about it. Keep them out of your zone. Nothing matters. Carolina's bellwether thing tonight. Keep New Jersey out of your zone. And this game is Carolina wins this game. This is one of those nights where you can just simplify from the get-go. Good gaps, good sticks, no problems. All right, so goals against, you see where they're giving them up at and everything like that. Markstrom is kind of giving them up from everywhere. Freddie has gotten to where he's just kind of given up the high-danger shots, which is fine. That's the ones you expect to have the largest percentage against. So that's part of the reason why Busty fits so well here is because he's got such a good save percentage, such a good high-danger save percentage and everything like that. So, again, keep him out of the slot. Keep him on the perimeter. And just deny entry, and this doesn't become a factor. Sorry, guys, I'm a little bit... My allergies been kicking my ass today. I'm sorry. All right. Everybody in the chat, tell me what Carolina needs to do to win the game tonight. Let's see if you were paying attention in class. And I will get to some of the comments while I'm at it. Evan Smith, what's up, buddy? Hopefully Luke scores a couple for us again. Man, that would... I'm at the point where I almost kind of sort of feel bad. No, I don't feel bad for him. I hate him. Damon says, hopefully they don't come out sluggish after last night. That's why I'm placing such an emphasis on just denying entry and suffocating New Jersey out in the neutral zone. And then you don't have to move your feet so much. If you're having to constantly go retrieve pucks when they're dumping them in, or you're constantly having to chase them down in your defensive zone when they get in there and, start cycling the puck around and have entries and everything like that, just stop them in the neutral zone. Kill those rushes in the neutral zone, and this becomes a much easier game. Back-to-back with Freddie in that. Yeah, but like Daniel's saying here, though, we can't risk running Bussy into the ground because right now he's the starter when the playoffs come. True. Last thing you need is Bussy injury right now. Don't even put those two words in the same sentence, Lackey. I swear to God, you're getting on my nerve, bud. I'm getting this close to sending those people to the water tower, and you're gone. Why does Rod have a hate boner for Nikishin? Or for Nikishin? See, the weird thing about that is I remember I was watching the post-game presser last night. I'm sorry I'm making so many, errors in speech. My nose is just really stuffed up because the temperature's been like this. But whole thing about it is, damn, this sucks. Whole thing about it is, even when he was talking about him in the post-game presser last night, it still seemed like he was nitpicking little things about him. In the 7 minutes of the game I saw, he looked fine to me. And he had 2 points, I believe. So I don't see what the big deal is about it. I don't know. I don't know what his deal is with that, but it needs to stop because Nikishin is the future of the Hurricanes defense, like the future cornerstone of it, because, he's the biggest way that the defense is going to stay top of the league, near the top of the league, as Slavin starts to get older, because we've already seen how bad or how difficult things are without Slavin in the lineup. You need Nikishin to be a bigger mitigating factor for that later, and then additionally be the cornerstone, be the top guy on that blue line. Those days are coming for him. So maybe that's part of the reason why Rod seems to be a little bit harder on him, because he knows that, he's going to be that guy one day on the blue line. But at the same time, though, I do feel like he's been a touch overly critical of him. There's also another particular player that I think he's been overly critical of to the 9th degree that I will not be mentioning on here, but you probably already know who that is. Cavery, what's up, buddy? Deny. That's yes. That is exactly what you do tonight. Deny. Evan Smith says they need to score more goals than the other team. Well, I personally don't believe that. Nope, I don't believe you. I don't believe you at all. Where do you think we'd be without Bussy? Wild card 2 at best. I'm not gonna front and tell you that, oh no, everything would have been fine. Nah, wild card 2 at best. Maybe on the outside looking in, even if I said anything else, I'd be lying to you. No, but Bussy is the biggest reason this team is where it is right now. And when he, kind of returns to his baseline performances, those are still good enough to get the job done. Yep, deny entry, block shots, yes. I'm feeling a lot more relieved now that teams are finally accepting rebuilds. Not sure who we will get, but the odds are good we get a really good 2C. The odds of that are going up, yeah. The odds of that are definitely going up. Can't get rid of Freddie. We need Freddie. Can't just be dropped. Yeah, no, can't move on from him. 92-mile-per-hour clap bomb. I actually don't think Rod has an issue with Nikishin personally. I just think it's because he knows his capability, so he may have heavier expectations to get the rookie mistakes out. That could be, but at the same time, it just seems to me he's a little heavy on that kid. I've seen players come through here that have made worse mistakes than some of the ones that Nikishin has made, and it's almost like crickets. And there's also been some players that are elderly practically by National Hockey League standards that made mistakes and then the media was told, no, that's not what you saw. I know exactly what I saw. Haggerty, don't even joke about that. Don't even joke about that. If that happens, I'm done. I might just delete the channel and call it quits. If they actually did that, traded him to another team in the division for Hamilton, I'd be out. I probably would, because there's no justifying that move. At that point, I would probably take to the streets and try to get people fired. I really would. I would start organizing like protests and stuff like that. No. Plus, Rod's actions show he does trust Nikishin. Yeah, that's the weird thing about it. There's times where he puts him in those high pressure situations. I just wish that, like, when he talks to the media a little bit, would do it a little bit differently. But it does always seem RBA has backhanded compliments when it comes to Nikishin. I haven't seen him make the same mistakes as someone like Chatfield, who has never critiqued by RBA. Yeah, Chatfield's been a little rough lately. I think he'll get past it. But he has had a stretch where he's been a little bit off. Like that line change the other night, I was like, bro, or it was last night actually, because I did get to see that part of the game. I was like, bro, that was kind of ill-advised. Yeah, I think he's just using him wisely. See Luke Hughes for the opposite situation. We're seeing how that's not working. Yeah, the only thing about that, though, Luke Hughes was never the player people thought he was. That's the thing. Luke Hughes, if he had, let's just say, like, he had been separated from the rest of his family at birth. I'm not advocating for stuff like that, but let's just say he grew up somewhere else and he never knew he was related to Quinn and Jack. And he grew up and he was Luke, I don't know, whatever his last name would be, Skywalker, I don't fucking know. But, like, I don't think that there would have been such big expectations of him. And I don't think people would have looked at him and said, oh, well, he's a Hughes brother, so automatically he's going to be great. I think that a lot of people put their expectations on him because of his name. And they didn't look and see, like, this guy is not the player they think he is. He will be no better than Gostisbehere. I've said that many a times, and I'm sticking by that. But I think that people looked at him and where he came from, and they automatically assumed more about him than they should have. I mean, Wayne Gretzky's brother was in the NHL. How often do you hear about him, though? That's the thing. I'm not saying that there's as big of a gap there. There's not. But all I'm saying is that, like, a lot of people put those big expectations on Luke, and including their front office and their coaching staff, to see him be a player that I just don't think he is, and I never thought he was. Nikishin, on the other hand, you had a different sample size. You had a professional sample size from him playing in the K. Yeah, it's not as good at the NHL, but still it's a better sample size than you get from a lot of other places. And I think that Nikishin turning into the player that you expect him to be, and maybe a little bit better, is a reasonable expectation. There were people already wanting to say that Luke Hughes was a top 5 defenseman in the league at 20 years old. And I'm like, okay, pump the brakes. He's not that. He never was. That's true. Luke might put a couple in for us. He did last time. That would be great. Panthers might miss the playoffs, and I sure hope they do. At the same time, though, I at the same time though, I kind of want revenge. I don't feel like, beating them 9-1 in a regular season game in January is great. I'll take that 10 times out of 10. But I want blood worse for 22-23 than I do any other series. Last season, yeah, Carolina went in there with virtually no hope of winning that series. No questions asked there. 22-23, they only won because of Sergei Bobrovsky. And the numbers back that up. That's the only reason Carolina didn't sweep them in 4 one-goal games. So, in a way, I want revenge. And I want it against the Rangers too, but that's not going to happen. So, just kind of, I'm on the fence about that. Now, if they miss, great. I don't like a lot of their fans. That's pretty apparent. There's some of them that I'm really cool with, but the rest of them, I really would like to see. I'm not cheerleading for them to make the playoffs, that's for sure. But if they happen to be there, and Carolina happens to have the type of performance that they had last night, even if both teams are fully healthy, or at least close to fully healthy, if you can beat them by 8 in January, you can beat them by 1 goal 4 times. See what I did there? In May. We'll see. It's early. Not sure exactly how everything's going to go down. But I do kind of want revenge. More for 22-23 than anything. Because that was the time where... That was one time I looked at a series and said Carolina did not deserve to lose that series. Ever since they started making the playoffs again, I have only said that about one series. And that was that one. 21-22, when the Rangers beat them, they deserved it. They couldn't score on the power play. They couldn't win on the road. It was only a matter of time until that paper dragon came apart. 22-23, that team should have won the cup. I'm a firm believer of that. That team, even without Svechnikov, without Kasha, without Pacioretty, that team had what it took. 23-24, that was the best team they'd ever put together, and the wheels came off. I till this day, it's hard to dissect what happened. But one of the worst things they did for themselves was going down 3-0 to the Rangers. And then people are like, oh, well, can they come back? Well, would you rather just not be in that position? And then last season, they exceeded expectations. And, if you account for the playoff series before that, like in 18-19, they wildly exceeded expectations that year. 2020 bubble, I don't really care about the bubble years. The landscape of the league was completely off. If they miss the playoffs, fine. But at the same time, I still kind of want blood. I really do. And predominantly because of 22-23, because Carolina should have won that series. Credit to the team in front of Bobrovsky that did not let his effort go to waste, because the team in front of Frederik Andersen let him down, and he played his ass off that series, that whole playoffs, honestly. That was when it should have got done. And that was a magical season too. 25th anniversary sweaters, stadium series game, everything was clicking. You won 6 games without Aho and 7 without Slavin or something like that. Like, everything was just going well. Burns would have had his first cup. Stepan would have had his first cup. I think Stastny would have had his first one, I think. You had a bunch of guys who were like on their last run to get one that would have finally got one. That was the year to make that happen. And it didn't. So if I want revenge for anything, it's that. What's a Bussy contract look like in your eyes? That's a tough call. So just like how the development of goaltenders is kind of hard to project and, figure out and everything like that, the contracts are kind of the same too. I don't think it would be anything outrageous. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if he waits until closer to the end of the season to sign something. Plus, there's a matter of, projecting out the salary for next year. Blake and Stankoven's extensions kick in. Nikishin has to get signed. So there's all those factors as well. I honestly can't give you a good estimate. I don't want to sit here and give you an estimate because I really don't know. I'll just be straight up honest with you. Like, when it comes to estimating what players will get, a lot of times, depending on what type of player it is, like I actually nailed Jacob Slavin's contract to a T, I thought, except for the fact he voluntarily took the pay cut he did. Because I had Slavin at 8x8, and he ended up taking 6.43, but his valuation, like his actual valuation from a bunch of different sources, was closer to 8.5. Seth Jarvis, I got that one nearly perfect. I said, I think I said 8.25 by 8 for him, and it ended up being something kind of like that. But it was something along those lines. The Aho one I was within 25K on. I said 10 by 8 for Aho, and he did 9.75 by 8. When it comes to goalies, though, I'm not that good at those. So I'm unfortunately I can't give you an answer on that. Slump 92. Go with Igor Shesterkin over 2C. I don't think the Rangers are going to trade him. That's a hefty price tag, too. Thoughts on Carolina being linked to multiple RHC? I think it's hard considering the need elsewhere and heavy investment already on the position of that group. I don't really listen to any of the things about Carolina being in on a right-handed defenseman. The reason I don't is because you only have 2 of them left. And they both have, and that's Walker and Chatfield, and they both have no trade clauses. So I just don't really see the point in that personally, unless they're planning on moving one of the left-handed defensemen out. Slavin's not going anywhere. Gostisbehere more than likely is not going anywhere. Nikishin better not be going anywhere. I don't think that it's like if you offer Nikishin up to get Quinn frickin' Hughes, okay, that's different. It's not offering Nikishin up to get Quinn Hughes as opposed to offering Nikishin up to get someone like, say, Rasmus Anderson, even if an extension is in place, are 2 completely different ballgames. You're going from amazing player to great player by trading great prospect to get one. Like, those are 2 completely different things. I personally do not think that the Hurricanes are actually really actively attempting to acquire a defenseman. I don't think that. I could be wrong. But I just don't see the need for it. I'm sure they'll kick the tires on a lot of other stuff just because they're looking to make other deals. And, eventually those things can morph into bigger packages. Or, example, Nino Niederreiter and Victor Rask. When they were traded for, that started out as a much larger deal. And eventually it came down to, I have this guy, he needs a fresh start. This guy also needs a fresh start. 1-for-1 trade, and that was that. It could go the other way, though, where it starts out as a small trade, and then other guys start throwing other pieces in. Who knows? It just kind of depends. But I personally do not believe the Hurricanes are looking at a right-handed defenseman from a primary standpoint. If it becomes part of a larger deal, I could see that happening. So that's the only things that I really could see happening with that. Daniel says, I agree. It could be because Rod knows Nikishin could be that guy in the future. That's the only reason I can think of. But at the same time, though, I feel like I've seen this before with that other Finnish center that I'm not going to mention. I feel like I've seen this already, and that's what worries me about it. Because I'm going to maintain this position probably until the day I die. That part of the reason he didn't work out was because there was some sort of disconnect between him and Rod that never got mended. And I'm maintaining that position. I will never give that up. I will never give that up. That 911 felt good. It's felt so good. In a vacuum, if you have to give up one for like a player like Robert Thomas, who are you giving up, Blake or Stankoven? I love them both, but teams will ask. I have given this a lot of thought because I've been asked this a few times. Blake is the better player right now, but I think Stankoven has a higher ceiling ultimately. That's just my personal belief. I could be wrong about that. Dude, that's almost a coin toss. Gun to my head, Blake. Gun to my head, Blake goes. I'd rather keep Stankoven. I like both of them. I like both of them a lot. I like Stank a little bit more, but gun to my head, I'm trading Blake for Robert Thomas instead. That's just me. Because I already know who goes on that spot when Blake comes out of the lineup. Svechnikov goes there and you put Ehlers back on the top line or something. Or you put Jarvis there. There's a bunch of different things you could do. But gun to my head, Blake. Yeah, that's a tough decision. That's a coin toss. It really is. Who the front office would probably offer up first, I don't know. That's a tough one. Evan says, Ghost has been insane this season, though. Yeah, he's finally being the player that I always said he was. Because, I remember I pissed some people off when I said he was better than Shea, and a bunch of people that, have shrines to him in their closet, like Helga from Hey Arnold came at me, and they're like, how dare you say he's better than Shea? And I'm like, because he is. Prove it. Okay, time will tell. Actually, I won't prove it. Shane Gostisbehere will prove it, and I rest my case. Right, look at the difference between the Suzuki brothers and Robertson brothers. Yes, absolutely, yes. WNC Puck Drop, what is up, buddy? Made it. Happy you're here. out of the 3 playoff series I've been in that I've seen, the 2025 run was the most apiece because I never imagined us making it Game 5 of the ECF. Yeah, the funny thing about it is when I saw how Carolina like hanged with Washington at the last in the last game of the regular season when there was all that fighting and stuff, and the few guys they have to be intimidation factors ended up not being intimidation factors, I knew Carolina was going to win that series. I thought it was going to take 7 when it started. By game 3, I was like, nah, Carolina's going to wipe the floor with these guys. So that's one of the biggest things for Carolina is if they don't have home ice advantage, if they shift it back to them, it's almost a death sentence for the other team. The one time that it wasn't was against the Rangers in 21-22. That was the one time that it just wasn't. But you look at that series against Washington last year, that's why I was emphasizing on it. Get a split, get a split, get a split. Getting a split is the biggest thing that you have to do to get back home with 1 win. And then you're in your wheelhouse at that point. You have last change. You have the crowd. You win 2 games there, and then you go to Washington. And it doesn't matter if you win the next game. You would like to, which of course they did. I'm surprised I didn't bust the windows out of my new apartment that night, or my new townhouse that night, because we had just moved down here. I wish I'd stayed there just a couple more weeks so I could have been at that game. But then again, that would have complicated us moving because I might have been in jail. But when Svechnikov scored that goal, I just totally lost my mind. And my girlfriend was like sitting there and she's like, was that important? Like, she knows that goals are important, but she like didn't understand the ramifications of how important that one in particular was. And like, I started getting texts from all my friends up there. Like my friend Kevin texts me and he goes, "Hey, congratulations. By the way, my wife's you." All my buddies up there were messaging me and everything. And it was fun though. But yeah, that one I was kind of like, I told myself I'm going to enjoy this because I know that the next round might suck, because that was before we knew if Toronto or Florida would be the opponent. And we were talking about it in the group chat the other day. I legitimately believe if Carolina played Toronto, they had a better chance to win, because it's like Carolina struggles against teams that are deep. And when it comes to teams that are deep, Florida is a deep team, especially when they're fully healthy. That's why I would be worried about playing against a team like Vegas or Dallas, or especially Colorado in the Stanley Cup Finals, because you look at that lineup, there's not really a whole lot of holes or weaknesses. Of course, they're trying to improve what they have, but like Carolina tends to win with their depth in a lot of cases. So when other teams have depth, that's when it poses a problem to Carolina. Really top-heavy teams, Carolina seems to have an easier time beating them. Florida's not a top-heavy team when they're fully healthy, and I think that's part of where the problem is. That's why it's like there's been such emphasis you have more depth and you can make things like that happen. Evan says the Slavin contract is a steal. Absolutely. What do you think the Blake contract will look like? Blake has already got a extension. His is 5.1, I want to say. 5.1 by 8, I want to say it is. It's not much. Next cap hit 5.1, 8 years. Okay, so it's 5.117002. Well, I'm glad they made sure to include the extra $2 in there. I think he's totally worth it. I'm saying north of $4 million, maybe. That's a possibility. That's one of the reasons I'd rather them just get it done now, and then maybe you chop a little bit of that money off, but upwards of $4 million, possibility. Careful saying the Nikishin got Hughes nowadays get you jumped online. It might get you jumped in real life too, because my buddy JJ that's been on here, people have legitimately threatened him for saying that they should trade Luke. Like, that's not even a joke. Like, legitimately, like it's kind of disgusting how people act over those guys. And they've never watched a hockey game to watch hockey a day in their life. They just sit there and make up their little, weirdo fan fictions about them all, autographing each other's neck guards and shit. They're weird. Nikishin will 1,000% be better than Hughes. They're neck and neck almost right now. If you're referring to Luke, yes. Quinn, I don't know. That's a bit of a stretch. But Luke, yeah. He woke up this morning better than Luke and the morning before that. So TTC, what's up, buddy? Just got here. If already discussed, just ignore me. What do you think about Zibanejad? Lots of Trocheck talk because the obvious connection with that dude has always been a pain to play against. I'm maintaining the same position on that I always have. I don't think Zibanejad would be a good fit for Carolina. I really don't. Most of the people that I've heard that want Zibanejad are just saying, hey, let's just swap him and KK and be done with it. And I'm not okay with that because that doesn't really help anything. Now, it would help the power play a whole lot. But, like, if a guy is not a passable 5-on-5 asset, which I don't think Zibanejad would be, wouldn't do it. Wouldn't do it. But, no, me personally, I would rather not do that. Trocheck, if I had to get somebody from the Rangers, I'd rather it be him. You guys know who I want. I've not given up hope on that happening yet. But if Robert Thomas goes anywhere other than Carolina and he's not still in St. Louis, I'm going to put the kids to bed before you watch. That's all I'm going to say. And if you're strong in your faith and can't stand foul language, I would also recommend you don't watch that show because I'm going to have some things to say if that happens and he's not in Carolina unless he just outright didn't want to, come to Carolina. But if it just happens because the front office fumbled a chance to get him, then I will be irate. Keeping Blake, 1 vote for Stankoven. The only RHD I would consider is Hronek out of Vancouver, solid two-way player, but more importantly, we know his contract. I think Anderson will be a cap anchor soon if a team isn't careful. So I partially agree with that. The part about Anderson being a cap anchor, I absolutely agree with. That's one of the reasons why when people were talking about him going to Boston, and one of the pods that broke that, I'm not a big fan of them, to be perfectly honest, for not entirely hockey-related reasons, just to be real with y'all. That's why I was like, if Anderson goes to Boston, that's just so he can get paid. So yeah, there is that. Hronek, I've never been a big fan of. Never been a Hronek guy. He's probably one of those players that I would like him if he did play for Carolina, but I just don't see the need for him. And I also want to, hopefully there will be a path for Legault and Nystrom at some point in the future, because both those guys, I think that's what they need to. In the future, the defense being some combination of Slavin, Nystrom, Nikishin, and Legault is what I'm hoping for. That's the future I see. Caper says, my trade package for Thomas, if they wanted Blake, would be KK Nadeau, Blake, 2028 first. It is a lot, but Thomas is worth it. I agree he's worth it. And of course, that's not the offer that you would throw immediately at the front of the table. But, if you say KK Nadeau and 2028 first and they say no, and then you have to start looking at other roster players, then that's at the point where it kind of looks at it right. Getting a split probably would have been the same strategy if saw Toronto in the Eastern Conference Finals. Yes, that would have been marvelous. If Carolina won the first game against Toronto, they put themselves in a better position to win that series than they did even against Washington at that point. They really do. That would be great. Someone scored that goal because I thought Game 5 was headed OT and that we were going to lose. Nah, I never felt like they were going to lose that game. Not once. I remember I was sitting. Part of the reason my girlfriend was like, got excited when I yelled was I sat watching that game, eating Donato's pizza, not Domino's, Donato's. There's a difference. I was eating Donato's pizza, and I'm like dead silent on the edge of my seat. I'm sitting there just like I'm at the point where I'm accidentally biting my fingers when I get to the end of a piece of pizza because I was like, this game, there's no way they're going to lose this game, right? Because I was just like, I felt like they were playing pretty well for the most part. There were a few times where they, made some mistakes and everything, but I'm sitting there watching and I'm like, come on, guys. Let's get another goal here and pull away with this. But yeah, that entire game, I just sat there in dead silence. I don't think I said a word until Svechnikov scored. I did not say a word to anybody. I just sat there. I was on edge that entire game. I don't know why, but that one, Raleigh 98 says, I think Tampa Bay is more likely to make the ECF in Atlantic this year. Would also make for some good revenge. Yes, I could see Tampa being the team that makes it out of there, and I'm not convinced that Detroit wouldn't come out of there. And like I was talking about last time I did Landfall Hour in regards to with the Red Wings, high-scoring games favor them. Their middle six is one of the best middle sixes in the league, if not the best one, at least in terms of producing. They have the best secondary score, or some of the best secondary scoring in the league. That's where I'd be worried about that. Now, if Carolina clamped them down to a bunch of low-scoring games, Carolina wins that series easily. But it would be tough to do. If I'm GM, I'm calling Columbus to see what they may want for Charlie Coyle, but I also should never be GM. Yeah, I was if I'm getting anybody from Columbus, realistically speaking, it would be Jenner is who I would hope for. Nystrom is warming up, so who is he replacing? Yes, he's warming up to be scratched. Yeah, everybody warms up. Even if someone is not playing, a lot of times they still warm up just in case at the last minute they do have to play. So, yeah, that's normal. Daniel says I could see a Carolina versus Tampa ECF. That series would make me nervous. Any ECF series at this point would make me nervous after the ECF has gone the way it has for Carolina. But, 08-09 team was not supposed to get that far. That was it. It took the last second shock at the Rock miracle in 09 to get to the conference finals, because that series was not looking good. Like they fought and they fought and they fought that entire series, not literally like throwing hands, but like that series was so back and forth the entire time, because that was the last full series other than the conference finals I saw before I left home, and that just took a lot out of them by the time they got to the ECF in that one. And then 18-19, they wildly exceeded expectations. Last season, they wildly exceeded expectations. So, but yeah, so 2009 and 2019 were miracle runs. 2009 was a decent miracle run. 2019 was like, it was not supposed to go that way for Carolina. Everybody, all the experts, and, I lived up there at the time, so it made it worse for me. People telling, Carolina's going to be out in 5. And I was like, and I remember my exact words to somebody on my beer league team. And this guy was all right. I didn't like him as a fan, though, because he was overly homerish. I told him, I said, if you don't beat Carolina in 5 games, and mark my words, and I swear to God, I said this, I've got witnesses. If you do not beat Carolina in 5 games, they will drag you to your heels by 7, and they will beat you in a war of attrition, because you can't keep up with the speed of Carolina for 7 games. And he's like, nah, man, we just won the cup last year. We've got Ovechkin, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay. This was the same dude who walked in a locker room at Kettler, which is now called MedStar, after one period of the Capitals, after raising their Stanley Cup banner, one period, and he goes in there, he's like, yeah, the Caps are going to repeat this year. I'm like, buddy, it's a little bit early to say that. And yeah, I very, very, very much a homerish fan and not a very good hockey player. I'll just be straight up honest with you. Not the worst one I've ever played with, but like some of us can skate backwards without falling over. Cheers. Carolina would have been smoked by Detroit probably if they'd gotten past Pittsburgh. Oh, back then, yeah. So that would have been, if they had magically gotten past Pittsburgh, they would have been lucky to get 5 with Detroit. It would have been the 0-2 run all over again. Caniac Joker, good evening, sir. What's your thoughts on Quentin Byfield? Not necessarily a trade for him, just thoughts on him as a player. I don't know a ton about Byfield as a player. He's in the wrong time zone for me to see him frequently. Plus, when I watch other teams play, I tend to hyper focus on certain players, and he's just one I've never really focused on. The possibility of Carolina acquiring him, I've seen like speculation and rumors and shit about it. I would have to watch him more to know if he's someone that I would want. Will Parks, what's up, buddy? How we feel about the game? Deny entry and Carolina wins. I know you probably got in here a little bit late, but yeah, the name of the game tonight is deny entry. Deny it every single chance you get, because New Jersey is not scoring much and they're not spending a lot of time in the offensive zone. Deny entry. Carolina versus St. Louis Stanley Cup final in 2019 would have been regarded as boring since both teams were overall irrelevant at the time. Yeah, it probably would have. I mean, I remember the aneurysm the media tried to have in 22-23 when the last 4 teams were Carolina, Florida, Vegas, and Dallas. They were like, But yeah, well, that is about it. I have some wings and fries. I'm going to go warm up. I didn't make it through the entire day with fasting. I had a little bit of a snack earlier. I do plan on doing damage report tonight because I got all my homework done before I started this stream. So good to go doing that. So I plan on seeing you guys after the game. Even if I don't, I will be streaming tomorrow, but I know a lot of people go to church tomorrow and everything like that. So I will try to stream after the game tonight. I will also be posting on X as usual during the game. So just remember, pull, focus, believe. Jankowski to China. I will see you guys later.